Now we are in the panel discussions about collaboration, and I will hand over to Peiman there.
Yeah, okay. Well, maybe this was too. All right. So, welcome to the panel. My name is Peiman, and I'm going to ask you some questions, and then we're going to see if anybody in the audience has some interesting questions as well. So, the situation is that we are multiple organizations involved with collaboration around Eiffel. And at the moment, we have both Eiffel community and a team chat around Eiffel. So we want to elaborate in the summit on how to do this together and organize around the protocols like governance, ownership, no diverging solutions, duplicated events, with the same information, etc. What we want to know is what problems you have faced and how you have solved this. So, do you have any thoughts about the organizational part, the collaboration part within your organization? Anybody want to?
Should we introduce ourselves?
Yeah, you can start with that.
Introduction first. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, you saw me before. Emil Beckmark, working for Ericsson since many years back, working with Eiffel since 2015 at least. Starting there. Yeah.
Yeah, so me before, Matthias, also working at Ericsson, and working with Eiffel.
Yes, I'm Magnus Beck, and I work at Access Communications, and we've been working with Eiffel since around 2016 or so.
Yep, Nikolai Dahlberg, been in over GTP for 1 year now. I worked at Ericsson for 4 years with Eiffel, and currently in the group of implementing it here in GTP. So, a fun journey.
Morning, Johansson. I have been working at Ericsson for 10 years and using Eiffel for 2 years in there. Then I moved to Volvo Cars for 5 years. I've been here for 6 months. So I'm not actually an Eiffel user, I would say. But I'm quite skilled in community building. That's what I've been doing last 5 years.
I want to compliment one thing. We didn't mention that before, but me and Matthias and Magnus, we are part of the Eiffel technical committee as well. We are the ones governing community and governing the protocol that happens to be the same people. Yeah, so, you know, we will talk more about governance and technical committee on the session tomorrow on the speed cabinet here as well.
Great, thank you so much. So the first question, what strategies works best in building a sustainable and active community around Eiffel? And how do you keep it going?
I guess that's what you're
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we have a pretty small organization, so for us, I guess we've come off pretty cheaply. We have a weekly meeting where all interested parties can attend, and we might have special invitees if we have a particular topic to bring up. But I mean, that's for our relatively small organization, that works actually surprisingly well. And we also, we have chat abilities and so on. So I would say it hasn't been that much of a challenge for us.
All right. Ericsson, you're like much larger, right? And I think, how did you guys go about?
Well, we have 12 hours with Eiffel now, if I count correctly. It was 12 years, sorry, 12 years. And obviously that changed over time. In the beginning, there was a small group of course, researching things that looking into how can we solve this problem and what is the solution? Well, an event protocol, let's try it. And I mean, there was a small group in the beginning. He was part of it and others, consultants as well, coming in, helping out. And then over the years, I mean, we used it, and those people stayed there for some years in that role, and people got to know them, and they asked them if anything was problematic there. We still don't have the internal proprietary version of Eiffel. I guess people knew where to go to have questions and to help. get help with setting it up. Then when we wanted to spread it to the others, obviously, so that's why we open sourced it. And the idea then was that we should get a community around it, as you would expect from an open source project or community. We were quite fresh in that when it was started. The ones setting it up didn't have too much open source experience. So maybe that's one explanation to why we didn't kick up exponentially from the beginning. It's, as you know, it's been a quite slow uptake of Eiffel in different companies.
But were you part of that change, you guys?
There wasn't really a governance at the beginning for the open source protocol. It was contributed by a few people in Ericsson, including some consultants, and those people were then the ones to go to talk about these things. Then we had a bootstrap technical committee for a year, and we created this governance document that we now we work together according to in the community. And we set up a proper technical committee. Was it like 4 years ago, something like that? 3-4 years ago?
Yeah, 3 or 4.
Us three here, we've been in a technical committee since then. So we realized it's not that much of a churn in the steering group. So that's for the open source parts. But then for the internal parts, again, when we open source it, we hope that we would be visible to both externally and internally. People in Ericsson would see that, well, there is an open source project, cool, that's totally that. But then we haven't really had the funding and everything set up internally to manage that responsibility in the perfect way, I would say.
So this is interesting. Like, you didn't do much open source stuff before this, right? And then you transitioned to actually open sourcing this, putting the company money into something that everybody could use, right? That's hard in a big company. I don't know. How was it for you guys?
We thought we would gain from it, obviously, as well. So, I mean, we thought it was such a good idea, such a cool thing that we contributed to open source, that we expected people to just magically find this and see it. That didn't happen for some reason. And we have tried different ways to go to open source foundations and communities, and we're still struggling there quite a lot, I would say. But funding, well, we're not yet there yet. We're not yet there yet, so to say. So we are looking for more, should I say, epic funding internally, so we can have a group that can actually gather the community and the protocol in a future-proof way.
Sustainable.
In a sustainable way.
Okay.
So when you're working with open source and you want to promote it, I would say that try to get some kind of backing from management or have some kind of budget, because of course you can get the coders and people who think this is cool and will do it in the kind of spare time or our free projects. But if you want to get in for the long run, you need some kind of backing behind that, because they're relying on people's time. Of course, that's open source. They do rely on people's time, but within a company, it's going to be hard, because if there are other persons coming in, then if you don't have that kind of backing, you probably won't get those resources pulled out.
Yeah. I'm thinking about Facebook and, Airbnb and a lot of other companies, software companies that do a lot of open source code. And maybe when it comes to more hardware closed companies, it's in my head maybe harder to go there. I don't know, that's my bias, I think. Okay, can you share specific examples where you have to balance traditional product development with community-driven approaches? what challenges and benefits did you face?
I can take it on a general level instead. Now I focus Eiffel, but I'm building our communities within companies. And it's the same approach. Doesn't matter if it's Eiffel or if it's another email source, we call it a company. Then you just need to, the same here, you talk about funding. You need the time. And often you have your idea and you solve something for a business. And that's the idea. And often in a big company like Volvo, Ericsson, Axis, you're not alone. You have 100 more developers. And often someone else has the same problem. You need to just find each other. And that's a tricky question. How do you do that? And you do that today with a digital collaboration. Setting out events, like in Eiffel. You had a good analogy in the beginning, the radio and the telephone. People tend to bring up the telephone to find the community. It will not scale. In a company like Volvo with 10,000 users, you cannot call everyone. I think you have the same problem in Ericsson. You cannot call everyone. In the Eiffel, you might so many, but it will be hard. So you need to digitally scale, like an Eiffel event.
To continue on the Eiffel analogy, you also need to be able to subscribe to whatever you're interested in. So let's say that you're interested in Eiffel, then you should be having an easy way to access the community and subscribe to what you're interested in. And also searchability. Make sure that you are easy to search for within the company or within the Google in that case, for example. That is one way to build it forward. If I search for event-based CSED, Eiffel is not what I'm gonna find, for example. The Eiffel community is not what I'm gonna find. So make it available in that sense. It's possible for you to join and find whatever you want to find.
Yeah, and that's what you were saying before, like we created this thing, open source, and now we need to promote it because it wasn't adopted magically. So I think maybe that's the big problem to actually make sure people know about it in big companies, right? So how do you manage conflict of interest when different contributors or organizations propose divergent directions for Eiffels or similar development? What strategies have you been successful for you guys?
All about communication, I guess, and discussion, and I mean, setting up community meetings and making sure that you those in an open air setting, I mean, having them, to say in Swedish, look to talk. I mean, everyone's opinion should be heard, and people, yeah, at the same time, there is an open source community, it's a community, and you vote for people to govern the community, to elect, in our case, the technical committee, or a governing board. And then those people are there to try to sort out such issues and discussions and also manage them and lead them.
So your technical board or committee is actually collecting the different ideas and then discussing them and giving direction to Eiffel, or
Yeah, sort of. I mean, since we're relying on people's contributions, then I mean, if the people contribute, then usually I don't think we've had a case where people wanted to contribute something and we have like set that up. No, I don't recall.
I guess we're not done with the source change.
No, I was just about to bring that up. So I mean, if I think that's maybe the best example of where we had different opinions, and in terms of the evolution of the protocol itself, we are fairly conservative because making backwards incompatible changes is, I mean, it's never fun.
painful.
Yes. So the source change events, I think that issue was opened at least 3 years ago, and we've had discussions with or without a whiteboard for I don't know, 6 hours, 8 hours. And I think it took like 3 or 4 hours before we were able to communicate, you know, what the problem was with existing events. And then you sort of, you guys understood why are we even, you know, making this mess of the existing events. So it takes time, and when it comes to protocol, it's probably wise to be rather conservative and let things take time, at least.
Have a English.
Slowness?
Slowness in the system. But there are rigid stuff like the protocol, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So when does it make sense to fork the standard?
Eiffel specifically, or any standard.
If you can answer generically, fine.
Then you do believe you have a core, spare properly, and you have nav track, if you want to try it. Then just fork it. Because that's also good for source work, or even source work. Just try it out and see. Just do it yourself and see.
But be careful.
Be careful, of course.
Yes.
But that's why you do a fork, so you can try it. And make it short.
Did you mean like working forever or trying out something?
It could go either way, right? When you fork.
Yeah.
Because maybe you want to just try out something, but then you can't go back.
All right, there are very different definitions of forking here. First of all, we have the versioning forking, with each major version that isn't backwards compatible. That can be for legacy reasons, especially in embedded work, where you might need a dependency checker. Then you might want to rely on more legacy ports, and then fork a major version. Then you have, of course, the testing, where you want to the contributors to test their own maybe Eiffel events, or maybe their own, let's say they implement their own REM or their own Eiffel trigger in Jenkins, for example. You might not fork their processor in that sense, but then merge it back. There are a lot of different ways to fork, but I think at least for the versioning, to keep the versioning and be able to patch whenever there are vulnerabilities and such, patch the ports in that sense would be making sense.
Audience question.
Yes, on that, what was the reason for the Garrett plugin being resulting in two versions?
That was on track.
Yeah, I guess I have to answer that one. One of the reasons was that we felt that the source change events emitted by the existing Garrett plugin, it didn't cover all the cases. For example, if you push straight into a branch without review, it didn't cover that. It didn't cover tags. It only was for Garrett 2.something old that was way older than what we were running. We try to stay like one minor version behind, and yeah, and it still hasn't been updated to, you know, past 2.16 or 2.14 or whatever. So we realized that if we want to start using this plugin, we have to take care of upgrading it to current versions and maintain all that. And we also have to patch to support the use cases that it doesn't support. Primarily, I think, pushing straight to the branch, and probably a number of other more or less corner cases. And doing that while the ergs and the folks being the maintainers, we figured that's actually less fun than just doing what we want to do.
That was one of the
It was a fork in a sense, yeah.
sure. One of the times it made sense to do that.
It happened to be that way.
Okay. Did you want to?
One thing to remember with forking is that if in the community like Eiffel, you are quite few. If you fork, in the sense that you're doing direct parts, you're smaller the communities and reducing the power. I think that's what you're possibly being careful by doing forking.
So again, specifically for the Garrett plugin, I think that comes back to the question you had before there, of how do we prioritize our time internally between our internal priorities and also the open source commitments that we have. And obviously we open sourced this Garrett plugin. We honestly don't use it yet ourselves, but we open sourced it, right? And then somehow internally the priorities changed. So there wasn't any push anymore for us contributing and supporting such a garage plugin in the open source version of the protocol. We still use the old legacy one to a large extent in Arizona. And therefore, our money couldn't be spent on updating that garage plugin that we open sourced sometime earlier. And I guess Axis realized that but we need to break our own.
Yeah, yeah. And this ties together a little bit with what we talked about earlier, how to make sure you get funding. If you can try to contribute and maintain stuff that you actually need. So it doesn't become a thing on the side, but if it's part of your core business, then the funding is there, it's not a problem. And if it's not part of your core business, then don't do it. Maybe.
Don't contribute.
Yeah.
About forking, I think we talked about the code and the protocols, but Emil, you touched upon the dialects or owning the dialects when it comes to the Eiffel model internally. I guess you could also fork that in a sense, or take your own direction in the organization, especially a big one.
Don't give people ideas.
Yeah, so I think Magnus said when he presented the protocol that it's not really specific in all areas. There are some certain properties in the protocol, both events are there, but mostly what properties exist and if they are mandatory or not. And that makes it possible for different parts of the organization to send events with different content. Because some of the properties are optional. But if your organization says that this property should actually be mandatory if we send events within our organization, there is no way currently in the Eiffel itself to, since some time back there is actually now, because now we have a meta.schema.uri or something like that property, which can help you to register your own schema internally in the schema registry, where you can have more specific descriptions of your protocol. You can override, so to say, the existing schemas on GitHub with your own, as long as they of course adhere to the ones on GitHub as well. You can make them more specific, and that's one way to avoid forking it. I mean, people then adhere to the internal version of the schema, then that will make it easier. But we haven't had that for a long time. So we have forks of the, optional parameters internally.
So it will be back compatible if you have the original protocol and add to it.
Yeah, from an Eiffel perspective, it will be compatible with the Eiffel. You use these optional parameters or not. But
I mean, it will be, you can only be stricter. So you can say that this particular field is now mandatory, but you can't say that this mandatory is now not mandatory.
Or you can restrict the namespace so that if you have a free text string, for example, so this Magnus mentioned that in the artifact created event there is a package URL that says what kind of packages you can create. And there is a generic type and you can make up your own, as you said as well. But maybe in your organization you don't want anyone to send events for another type of package than these few ones. And then you can restrict with your schema. It's only these few ones that are allowed to be used in our object created events, so that the consumers of those events knows what to expect.
One thing we haven't touched upon at all is you can introduce your own events if you like. There's nothing illegal about that. So if you need your Eiffel coffee pot is ready event, you can have it. Obviously, no other parts of the ecosystem is going to understand it, but it's okay, and it can be part of your Eiffel graph. And eventually, maybe you can work work that event into the official protocol.
Just want to also point out that if you're working in a company with engineers, and if you don't give a good direction, they will make something up. So that's probably one good reason for making it strict.
Yeah, we did that a lot there, so we were engineers, we found out that we could. Then we didn't have proper standards how we did it, and it all got to become a mess, so be careful.
There's a reason why we have standards, right?
Yes.
Okay, I have some other questions from that Edwin gathered, and this is now getting nitty-gritty. So how strictly to follow the protocol, like test case or unit tests? Question mark.
We don't do that, at least not yet. No.
I think in your local implementation, you should be as strict as the schemas permit you to be. In the sense that, and also going back to engineers being quite imaginative. So you might want to restrict them with your tests. Or else they might spin out and do the whole thing just because it's fun. Or because they might need something. So testing for restriction purposes, I think, is a good idea in your local implementations. However, in the GitHub repositories or in the official implementation, you don't really see the full need of it since you have the schemas. But in your local implementations, definitely have unit tests for all your events.
Yeah, I think also, I'm not sure if the question was if you should unit test your events anyway, if it was stand events or all your unit tests. But I think when you, just to comment on that later thing, that if you should send events for the things that you assume that someone else is interested in hearing about. So obviously, if you have thousands of unit tests for your small components, it doesn't really make sense to send the activity trigger, started, finished, and test case trigger, started, finished on all of those unit tests. Obviously, it's better to send a conference level in the end saying that now this sub-component has passed this level of unit testing. So consider who could your consumers be and what could they be interested in hearing about?
Anyone?
Yeah.
Good.
We usually say that you can choose what to communicate, but not how. So I think sums it up pretty well. You can choose to a large extent, what kind of resolution do you want? As you said, don't perhaps include unit tests, specific events for that, but sort of the bigger tests that people care about more and are relevant outside of the closest team. That makes sense.
But yeah, and again, we talked about that earlier as well. I mean, asynchronous communication is fine, as the producers of the events don't need to know about their consumers, but there still needs to be some kind of overarching system level saying that, hey, each component should actually send these kinds of events because on system level, we need to see these things.
To create a standard in your organization, like, hey, when you tested your thing, always send this event.
We should.
Yeah. Good, thank you. So another question is how to avoid too much team-specific information, custom data.
In the events,
I don't know.
or in the general communication between people in the community.
I think it's in the events. Custom data is the field in the events, so that's the.
Yeah, custom data is just a general object where you can include any key value pairs you want. So it's an escape hatch, but also a trapdoor. We don't use it at all, I think.
For what reason?
I think the need hasn't really arisen. We've been able to model things anyway.
And it's not specified, so you cannot really validate events by the schema that exists. Because the custom data is cutting.
Yeah, it's not supported, it's just your own, you put in whatever you want to build upon it, right?
Yeah, but then you could again have your internal schema registry with restricted schema internally, and those schemas could say something about what custom data should always be available in these kinds of events, for example. We don't have those yet in Ericsson, but we will sure, because we tend to use some custom data. And it seems pretty hard to write.
Then, yeah,
But remember that, I mean, the reason you're sending events is because other things you understand it. So if you're adding too much specifics into it, people won't understand it. So that kind of motivation of maybe should have included it if you want other people to understand it.
And then it's on you to document it, additional custom data, so that can be a deterrence.
Mhm.
You can, with the standard stuff, there is documentation.
All right. If we go back to community building, so if you would give suggestions to newbies on how to get on board with this and maybe motivate them, what would that be, and how do they start out? Do you have any, like, if we did it again, we would do it this way, right? Do you have any tips that could be good? One thing that I understood is if you have to be able to fund it. So that's just like a foundation for this, if I haven't misunderstood you guys. So that's a good tip, right? Other than that, how to keep it going, keep it alive, because I personally been part of a lot of committees and it dies out, right? So it's probably not valuable enough for enough people when it dies. But when you know something is valuable for the company in the long run, how do you keep it alive? How do you keep the fire burning?
You arrange summits,
Yeah.
and you talk about it, and you try to be visible, well, both externally and internally. I mean, we struggle with it within Ericsson quite a lot. We have had different ways to tackle it. The last thing we did was setting up a usage board cry for the company. But funding again, we didn't really have fixed resources, people that paid to work to drive that usage board.
You have it now?
No, we're waiting for it. We hope we can get it soon. Otherwise, all our different teams will make custom variant again, and we might not be able to understand each other.
It seems like that's the big challenge, like to get the money people to understand this is important.
Central governance and central drive.
I would question that a bit, because you started 2012, and now open sourced in 2016, and we are now 2024, and you're still here. So the funding is an issue, but you still have not the funding. You've been alive for almost a decade, so that's not the only issue.
Are you an afterburner now, or?
Maybe.
Yeah.
But some of us might still see this as a cool thing and a good thing, but you haven't really convinced everyone, at least not managers, to pay for it. But as long as there are engineers realizing that this is something cool that we should maintain and support, then it will still somehow work, but it might not evolve in the pace expected, and new store change event variants might not be created as quick as we had hoped for a couple of years back.
Of course, but I'm just saying that this is not something that should stop you from doing something you believe in, because they managed to create something really good, and which are used in several companies without the funding.
I mean, we all know skunk work, right?
Yes, exactly. So keep doing skunk work.
Skunk work is like the difference between knowledge of people with actual resources and the people that know that's good. But one thing is this, that maybe my thoughts, we need to be better at, business case of introducing this. And we as engineers need to be better at that skill, so that we can show people like, hey, we will make a savings if we do this in 5 years. But then we need to invest and we have break even X and Y. I mean, in my opinion, That's where we need to put our skill sets in.
How do we attract business people to this community then?
Mike,
Yeah.
I just ask a question because you had an example in Ericsson. You said that you did some added a new line, new pipelines with cloud and on-prem in a couple of days. Ask the managers, what if we have stopped developing Eiffel now today? Remove it.
We are heavily dependent on Eiffel. We couldn't deliver any source code for this great access network thing if we hadn't Eiffel.
Yeah,
I mean,
business.
if Eiffel stopped working, then yeah, we do. And that's why we hope now to get some management funding.
And that's how crucial it is. It's like, I mean, we have a software issue here. We have hardware factories. And if there's something stopping in the hardware factories, you need to fix it the same day. But in the software factory,
Yeah.
we don't care really, just fix it. That's a failure here.
The change you did within a few days there, how much thanks did you get for that?
Good question.
I think I don't know if Christopher is online now, we can answer it online, maybe we can transcribe it then. Because he was the one presenting that, describing that use case. He was part of that journey, I wasn't myself.
Okay.
I haven't heard, I mean, I'm quite close to Christopher, I haven't heard from any manager saying that this is thanks to iPhone. I would have expected to have heard.
Maybe that should be part of the sales pitch.
I think the risk is, I think they got this, okay, you saw the thank you, or not even thank you, but you saw the let's go on. So absolutely, you need to think about, if you want to drive communities and so on, to get other people's on board, so you don't just go to engineers that might need to speak to, but there's also a lot of other people, for example, you've talked documentation, presenting like this, I mean, so.
Legal. Oh, the doors, no. Right?
Yeah, so definitely try to, if you want to get community, definitely try to expand outside your kind of comfort zone of what you usually people talk to.
And bring up concrete examples. It's very easy to sort of describe what I did earlier, you know, with, we're building an information system, it's a graph, you can answer any question, but that's usually not a good way of selling it. You probably want to have something really concrete. That solves a specific problem.
Like strawberries and cupcakes.
Yes, exactly, yes. Everyone likes strawberries.
And if you add how much you will save, then it's a start.
Yeah, that's also good.
All right. So we have another tech. Do you want to say something?
Yeah, just say something. But also make all these values extremely visible in the community outside of the company, outside of every company. And not open source is not limited to the companies in Sweden. It's all over the world. And I haven't found any single implementation that would be as good as Eiffel when it comes to event handling in CI/CD. So one thing as well is that make everything extremely visible to everyone in an external community. There's a lot of talk about what's going on inside Ericsson and inside community. But if you want outside contributors, the same has to apply to them. And have it be extremely open and unfortunately good to market it outside to gather the engineers of the world. That's what's the thing.
Maybe one proposal is to kind of, like when you talk about visualizing it, maybe it can be added, because dashboards or visualization is usually the point where higher management gets any output usage of the Eiffel code. But maybe if we're adding power by Eiffel, giving some credit back to the brand, I was going to say, but
Still a brand.
maybe then there will be more understanding of what we need to get this kind of data.
Thank you.
I mean, visualizations are generally for anyone. It's good, not only managers. If you can visualize that, for example, you can have all your components collected into one place and where everything comes from, and visualize that, regardless if it's microservices or if it's embedded software libraries. It could be anything, literally, in terms of software development. To visualize that and make sure that and make it searchable, you can get I think a community can be really ridiculous in that sense.
Yeah, I mean, if you show that the system is saving a lot of money, which it does, obviously, within 3 days, then it should be a no-brainer. Now, I want to give the opportunity for you guys to ask questions, especially about community building, sustainable coding, open source, etc. Anybody? All right, then I have the last question here. So how do you envision the role of open source evolving within your company's code base in the future?
I think our products, at least when it comes to what runs in our devices, is completely based on open source. I think it's something like 80%. I mean, we run the Linux kernel, system, the G string, or everything. So we would be nothing without it. So, and we've been doing that for a quarter century. So I don't think it's going to change.
It's in your DNA.
Yes.
And same here. I mean, I haven't counted myself, but I heard in a presentation a year ago that is it 95% of our software is open source. And we have a lot of developers developing internally, developing software ourselves, but still 95% of the code base, I think, is open source.
That's a lot. Yeah. So what about people from Volvo?
I was in Volvo Cars before, and they have started the journey to look into open source, and they have doing that. So they're in that now. But in Volvo here, I've been in for half a year, and I haven't really seen that we have the same thinking in Volvo. I say some people that I'm right. And that's an issue here, because like they say here, everything is open source. If you're a developer, you know the IDE is often open source. You have Linux, you have Kubernetes, Jenkins, Eiffel. Just bring it on, whatever you want, that is open source. And then within the software in the trucks, we will have open source as well.
How much do we contribute? We're taking a lot. How much are we giving back? You know, that's what I'm a bit disturbed about.
Exactly. That's, I think, where we lack a lot. And open source is not for free, even if it's open. So, of course, you can take open source in and you can use it, but you should also be there to contribute to these are the major projects that you are using. And that takes some effort to convince management about that, I would say.
Yeah.
And also the legal aspect, of course. And that's something we struggle with as well. But we have some ways at least to contribute nowadays.
Anybody contributed to Jenkins?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Not me personally, but other people in my immediate team, sure. Yeah.
Have anybody, do we have we done that? We're using it every day a lot, right?
We pay the supplier to do it.
We do.
We did.
They actually are committing code to the open source part. Well, that's good. Yeah. This is, I think, what we need to work on in the future, like make sure that management understands the value of giving back to the community.
I haven't contributed to Jenkins myself, but I've been communicating and discussing with one of the product managers of Jenkins.
Oh.
In the Jenkins community. So, I mean, I've been talking to him about future Jenkins.
Cool.
And that's also one way to contribute.
Absolutely.
Not just to contribute code.
No.
Or bug reports or something, or pull requests. It's also be part of the community and help out there discussing their strategies and their. I mean, we've discussed a lot on how we could integrate events into Jenkins. We didn't talk so much about Eiffel at the time because we talked about ski events, and that's another story that we might come back to. So, yeah. I'm the city events guy who was got some about city events later on.
Cool. Will people be able to come and ask you guys about, like, now you had one of the boxes there were how to get started, right? And I think it would be nice to have some session to just come and ask, like, how do I get started? And then you can maybe give them some pointers what to think about.
We can give you a pointer to a YouTube recording from last year's summit, where Panos made a presentation on how to use this easy-to-use project that exists.
Awesome.
So we didn't intend to repeat that live in this summit, but it's there and use it.
We have that link somewhere, or can we get it and then we put it in
Go
there?
to YouTube and search for Eiffel community. You can find it.
That should be on the start page on the readme of the Eiffel repository, but I don't know if it is, but it should be beneficial. That's
Okay,
good.
great. Then you know, read me.
That's it.
Yeah. Community GitHub live.
Yeah, it should be, because whenever you want to contribute, it should be, you always start at the base readme, and then you go from there. You got good links there to the different readmes and to how to contribute, but it would be nice with more projects as well, in the sense that, oh, if I want to use the different SDKs that works better, for example, hopefully include them as such. Just to make it easier for people to understand and contribute. I think that's good.
And with that, I want to thank our beautiful panel. Thank you so much for this session. And giving me a call. Awesome. Thank you.
And thank you, Peiman.
Thank you very much.